thrill and pleasure to welcome in former heavyweight boxer Gerry Cooney. Gerry, how you doing today? Can you hear me, Gerry?
What's cooking, Larry?
Good. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can. I'm hooked up here. I'm just trying to turn this down a little bit. Okay. Is that better?
Well, thank you, first of all, very much for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
No, let me tell you something, bro. I wish I could come through this camera right now. I'd get you by my hands on you.
Yeah, I know. I tell you what, I had to move away from New York because of that, Gerry.
There you go. There you go. How's everything going? You guys all right?
Yeah, it's going good. Gerry, let me ask you something. I want to start out. I mean, I've watched you. I had the pleasure of watching you your entire career, growing up in New York for first 13 years of my life, living on Long Island, then moving to Massachusetts. How did you, a lot of people at a young age, they think about getting into football. They think about getting into baseball, basketball. How did you get into boxing?
My father always had a couple of pairs of gloves laying around, and we used to go out in the backyard and box around. And I used to carry the gloves to school when I was, ninth grade or something. And I'd box the kids at the school bus. And then later on, I remember going to the gym when I was 15 and a half. And I thought, let me box somebody. And I boxed this little Italian kid who had like 5 years experience. And he smacked me around the gym. And I threw the gloves off. And I went back home. And I went down in the basement again. I hit the bed, understanding that he was going to come at me. And then 3 days later, I went back to that gym and I asked if I could box that kid again. And he couldn't do that to me again. And that's how 6 months later, I went into the New York State Golden Glove Championships and I won the middleweight title. It was the largest tournament in the United States. And I had 7 fights. I had 5 knockouts and I won the middleweight championship.
Now, Gerry, that February 15th, I'm going to bring you back in time, okay? 1977, your first paid bout was versus Billy Jackson. You won in the first round. I don't know if you remember that fight.
Sure, I do.
You won it in the first round by a knockout. What was your being in that first fight, getting paid your first time? Do you remember leading up to that fight? The nerves and the feelings you had before and after the fight?
Well, I had some people also. My trainer, my amateur trainer, John Capabianco was a great trainer. And his kid was turning pro, Johnny Capabianco. So I got to watch the excitement he had about turning pro and becoming a professional prize fighter. And then when it came time for me, my friends were going away to college to get educated. I didn't have that option. So boxing was the next avenue for me. I made it to I won the Golden Gloves, the heavyweight division that year. I fought on the United States. I had 4 knockouts over in Europe. I came home, and they told me to stay in shape. The Russians were coming. So, I fought the 3rd-ranked Russian heavyweight champion and knocked him out dead in the first round, put him to sleep. And I got an opportunity to fight on the finals of the Olympic trials, which I didn't go to, because my father was sick, and I told the president of the Olympic Committee that I couldn't make because my father was sick. That was 10%. 90% was I didn't think I was good enough. What am I going to go make an ass of myself out there? And it's one of the biggest regrets of my life that I didn't take the opportunity. I probably might not be able to make it, but I could have had that experience. You understand, Larry?
Yeah, I understand. Now, let me ask you this. You bring up a great point. 10 years later, you're in the national spotlight. I mean, you're beating couple of one-time title challenges, Jimmy Young, Ron Lyle. When did you realize, Gerry, because you said you didn't go to the Olympics because you didn't think you were good enough. When did you, at what point of your career did you say, I think I can fight for the heavyweight championship?
Well, it's funny. I was fighting. I was knocking guys out left and right in the gym, training, in fights. And I grew up with a low self-esteem. My father was a raging alcoholic, and I learned a lot of negative emotions, and I never believed in myself. And thank God that that's not with me today. But I still had to fight. Once the bell rang, once they knocked on my door in her dressing room and said, Cooney, you're next, I had to take that long walk from the dressing room to the ring. And once you hear the roar of the crowd, that's when you become magical. And you have a plan. And if that plan don't work, you make adjustments, and then you figure out how to get that guy. And I was pretty good at that. And I was always a big puncher. And so once I touched you, you could see the expression in the fighter's face changing.
Larry Holmes said you had one of the toughest, hardest left-handed punches of any boxer he ever knew. Where did you learn that left-handed punch?
Larry, that's a great question. And, when I started out boxing, I went to the gym and everybody was fighting right-handed. I didn't get it. I'm left-handed. So they were supposed to turn me around to fight a righty, but I didn't know it. So I stayed left. I stayed right-handed fighter stance. And that turned out to be a blessing because every time I jab, you figure you throw 100 jabs in a fight compared to about 20 right hands. Every time I jabbed, I was hitting with a solid jab, and it was a phenomenal power. Larry Holmes didn't even know it when we fought that I was a left-handed fighter. And so from right then in that moment, I felt like I was in charge. I felt like finally the first time in my life I was somebody. I remember going after every night I'd fight in the garden. I would go to the newsstand, and my picture seemed to be on the back page of the Daily News every day. And that's how I became somebody. And it helped me, boxing helped me to express the anger, what was going on in my house. And then they put my picture in the paper, so it made me somebody. And that's how it fed me. And that's how I became a fighter.
How did you transition? I mean, you went from a boxer who didn't have yet a big following in the late 70s. And, 10 years later, you're starting to fight well-named boxers or previous title challenges fighters. I mean, how was the transition from being somebody that wasn't famous to all of a sudden being on those tabloids, the New York Post, the Daily News? I remember them on Newsday, all those papers.
I always had a great following from Huntington, Long Island, where I came from. It was about a 35-minute ride into the garden. And back then, in them days, every preliminary fight was in the felt form, the small garden. And then the finals were always held in the big garden. And I got the chance to go to the finals 3 times. I won two championships. And so I had a big following of local kids, local families, and friends that came follow me in the gloves. And so that's how I got my start. And I wasn't really thinking anything about success or famous or anything like that. I was looking to save my life, to figure out what's next for me. What's the best avenue for me to go to get to where I want to go? I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a wife and kids. I had no idea. My friends went away to college. I was on my own at 15. I was living alone at 15 years old, and I had to find my way. And boxing was the way for me.
Yep, and you had a big, Smithtown, where I was from.
Oh, yeah.
You had a big follow. We were right down the road. We knew where the Huntington Townhouse was over there in Huntington.
It's so great. It's so great. Like, I was put into the Long Island Hall of Fame. It was a very exciting time for me. And I had a lot of great moments. I made some mistakes. Listen, after the Norton fight, I knocked out Kenny Norton in 54 seconds of the first round. You think I would have thought to myself, well, I better get a good trainer, a good condition guy, nutrition guy, so I can be ready to fight for the championship. I started drinking that night and messing around, not taking care of myself, thinking I could handle it. And I found out years later that Larry Holmes never drank, never smoked, never took a drug through his whole career. And I was drinking at 12.
Now, let me ask you this. I mean, that fight before the Holmes fight, leading up to the Holmes fight, and I know Larry talks about it quite often, was he didn't like the way the fight turned out in the media, where he wanted it to be, he was fighting a great heavyweight challenger in Gerry Cooney. Mm-hmm. But he said he felt like it became more of a racial bout with white versus black. How did that affect you? I mean, it had to bother you to some degree where people were siding with each other over color rather than over content.
Listen, there is ignorance in the world, and I don't know who it was, Don King or whatever it was, used it as a promotional tact to raise money, to get money, to make more people angry and fight. It was a very tumultuous time. I mean, there was, Larry had his mailbox blown up. I used to get letters. So, it was a terrible time. And for me, I had 5 or 6 guys I grew up with who were in camp with me. And we were living out in Palm Springs and Las Vegas. We were eating turtle soup and lobster tails. So it didn't affect us. I don't know what was going on with everybody else, but as far as I was concerned, I'm living in Las Vegas for months. I'm living a dream. I grew up as a poor kid in Huntington, Long Island. It was like, I felt like Isthmus. You know what that is? You know what Isthmus is? Isthmus be my lucky day. That's what I was thinking about.
Well, I'll tell you what. And now we get to that fight. I have to ask you this because, first of all, you and Larry were friends before the fight, right?
No, we did not know each other.
You became friends.
I remember years before when I first turned pro, I was like 20, and he came to Gleason's gym where I trained. And I remember bumping into him, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I told him who I was. And I said, listen, if you ever need someone to work with, I'd love to work with you. Now, I was playing games with him back then. That's how boxing is. You play chess with each other until the moment the bell rings. And he was a great champion. He was the top 2 or 3 fighters of all time. The greatest fighters of all time. And I got a chance to fight him for the heavyweight title with a little bit of experience, not the experience I needed, because I didn't sign with Don King. He kept me out of the picture. I didn't get a chance to fight those guys that I needed to prepare me, to give me better looks so I could be more experienced. So when the bell rang with Larry Holmes, I had a better shot to win. I also want to tell you, Larry, that it's amazing in today's time. We just saw Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury have their trilogy, 3 fights in a row. We never had a second fight. We never had a third fight, but it merited having it done. I don't know why it didn't take place back then, but I learned so much in that fight with Larry Holmes. I was a way better fighter, 2 times the fighter I was after that experience, that loss in the 13th round. I found out about endurance. I found out how to train better. I grew up in the ring as a fighter from that experience that he gave me.
Yeah, do you look back now and do you regret not going with Don King?
No, I do not regret going with Don King. I regret going with my management. And they kind of sheltered me. They were looking for the big payday too. I needed experience. I needed to be ready when I fought Larry Holmes. It was the heavyweight championship of the world, the biggest prize in the world, as far as I was concerned. And I didn't get it. I knocked out Norton in 54 seconds. I knocked out Ron Lyle in one round. Jimmy Young, I knocked him out in 4 rounds. I didn't really get the tough guys I needed to give me that experience.
Now, what was a typical day of training for Gerry Cooney leading up to a fight?
Well, you get up first thing in the morning at 6:30, 6 o'clock, 5:30, and you go out and run anywhere between 3 and 6 miles. Up in the mountains where there's a lot of hills. You come back and you do weight training for your stomach, for all your muscles and your punches come from your stomach. So you have a good core. You're better able to. I can get from point A to point B faster and quicker with more power. So we did a lot of work on the stomach. Then we'd go eat up and we'd rest. I'd go back to the room and rest for a while. And then around 3 o'clock, I'd go to the gym. And I'd have 4 or 5 or 6 sparring partners every day. And I was to work out with them every day. And I had to stay ahead of all of them. And, it's a great feeling that these guys, they have 5 sparring partners there. And while I'm boxing one guy, the other 4 are watching me make my mistakes. So that when they get in there, that's how you get better. That's how you develop as a fighter. Because you got to keep advancing. You got to keep getting better, staying ahead of those guys. And I was very good at that back then.
So what do you think of the Wilder Fury fight? What do you think of boxing today, Gerry? I mean, you got to understand, and you know this, the boxers back then, with the Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Alexis Aguayo, Aaron Pryor, and Boom Boom Mancini. I mean, we can go all day here. I mean, it's definitely, we had a lot more faith.
Larry Holmes.
Back then.
We did. And, I want to tell you something. There was a big lull in the fight game because I think the boxers and the public learned that the boxers were getting raped and robbed. They weren't getting their just due with paychecks. They were fighting their asses off, but they weren't getting the paydays. And I think that some of the promoters out there were ripping them off. And then boxing died out. A lot of those guys that would have became fighters went to football, basketball, baseball, soccer. And then, time passed. And, obviously one guy I got to really, applaud is Bob Arum. He's been in the game over 50 years, and he's done so many great things. I really love that guy. And then now, listen, we got Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, one of the best heavyweight fights we saw in such a long time. Could be fight of the year, could be knockout of the year. That's in all the division. The light heavyweight division is phenomenal. Welterweights, Canelo Alvarez at 168 is a phenom. Middleweight division, lightweight division, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney. You've got so many great fighters in all the divisions. Now we got DAZN, we got Top Rank, we got PBC. So we have to get those guys to bring their fighters together so the fans here can see it.
Are they not marketing it correctly, Gerry?
No, I think they're doing a great job. I think that the pandemic hurt everybody a lot. And Barbarian really stood up there too and put the fights on. You got to stay in a bubble. And so we got to see some of the fights. But so many fights are waiting in the wings. And they're going to start appearing. And we're going to start to see some great fights. We got Showtime Shawnee Porter fighting Terrence Crawford in November. What a great fight that will be. We got just so many. We just saw Manny Pacquiao lose to Ugas. Right. We just saw Anthony Joshua get schooled by Alexander Usyk, who was a cruiserweight champion and a gold medal winner. He just, from pillar to post, he beat Anthony Joshua up. So it's great fights. We just have to bring it. I tell people, listen, on your computer screen, put on Boxing Scene and read a couple of stories every day and follow the guys. Let's get back in the game again. It is a great game.
Yes, it is. Talk about your gym or your academy, Gerry. I know you're doing a lot. Talk about what you're doing for younger kids with boxing, and also talk about how the academy has helped you grow as a person as well.
Listen, I love to teach people, give them confidence. I've worked with a lot of kids who were bullied, a lot of kids that were picked on, and, accountants been picked on, and other people in the world that never had the courage to stand up for themselves. And I bring them into the gym, and they leave like 6 inches off the ground. They're learning something about themselves. They're learning self-confidence, and that I can do it, and that we can do anything we want as long as we get the help. As long as we ask the question, can you help me? There will always be somebody to help you, direct you, and to make you all you can be. And I had such success with it, and that it's not like it's all free. Like we help each other grow. If someone did it for me, I can do it for them, and then it gets passed on again. And that's the great gift about it. And I believe in charity work. I think everybody should do charity work, helping the less fortunate get to a better place. And I've been lucky and fortunate enough that through my whole career, I've got to be with some of the greatest athletes of all time, basketball, football, just all the sports, baseball, doing charity work for the less fortunate. And that's a big thing I stress for people to do.
That's awesome. Last question before I let you run, Gerry.
You sure you want to fight me?
I'm having second thoughts all the time.
You see that there, bro?
Yeah, that left is gonna hurt me.
Oh, trouble, bro, trouble.
Hey, my dad was a lefty too.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was. So let me ask you this: if there's kids out there, because parents have this fear, you know how that is. Just like now with football, we're getting hit in the head and all this stuff going on. What advice would you give to kids and their parents that would love to go into boxing, or maybe are afraid of their kids getting hurt at a young age?
Well, first of all, you don't have to box to go into boxing. You can go and work the pads, you can work the heavy bag, you can hit the speed bag, you can skip rope, build you a lot of self-confidence in yourself. But I tell people, when you go to the gym, don't say anything, just go for a couple of days and watch the guy who's teaching defense. Watch the guy who's teaching the guys how to protect themselves, how to keep their hands up, keep their elbows in, and step to the right. Keep staying away from that right hand. That's the guy. Anybody can learn to punch, but you got to find a guy who's going to teach you defense so your kid can stay safe. And then you can box your whole life. I mean, listen, I'm 65. I can still box anybody in the world. I can protect myself. I know how to stay in range. It's just, we have to get the right information. And unfortunately, a lot of the great trainers that are in this world, like Eddie Fudge, Victor Valley, Gil Clancy, and so many other guys, is that they passed. And so these young kids came in and they're teaching a watered down version of boxing. And that's got to stop because the quality of the game is different. And we have to teach well-rounded fighters. You got to, Deontay Wilder fighting Tyson Fury, he's got to get into Fury's body to get Fury to drop his hands and then turn it over the top. You got to make a plan. You got to have a toolbox. You got to make adjustments. There's so much involved in the fight game. Everybody thinks it's 1, 2, 3. No, that's nothing. There's so much involved. And once you learn it, it becomes you. And there's nothing like it in the world to teach a kid how to hit the speed bag, how to hold his hands, how to protect himself, and to be able to fight. And then they don't even have to fight if they don't want to. You can use it as conditioning, exercise, go running. There's a lot of things to do.
Well, Gerry, I want to first of all thank you very, very much. I do have one more question. I lied to you.
Damn, what the hell?
All right, I see that left. And I always wanted to ask someone like you this question, that someone that grew up in the boxing world. Do you think MMA has hurt the game of boxing, the UFC fighting? And number two, do you like it or do you dislike it?
No, I don't think. I think for a while, boxing got to be where they were putting mismatches on, and there was not really good fights. They were all mismatches, and people weren't getting their fair shake. Along came MMA, and it kind of startled people, and they watched it a little bit. I think it's way too brutal. Although the referees are very close to the combat, it's dangerous. There's nothing like boxing. Boxing is a great sport. You wear gloves, you wear a headgear, you protect yourself, and you're safe. You're taught to be safe and to look out for yourself. Listen, I'm not going to begrudge them of what they do. They're making a lot of money. They're becoming stars. It's not for me. Not for me.
Well, I got to tell you, I feel a lot safer being here rather than next to you right now.
Thank goodness. You're so right. I'll get my hands on you, bro. Let me get my hands on you, bro.
But on a serious note, I want to thank you very much for joining Frankly Speaking Sports tonight. It's great to have somebody I lived right down the road from, that had an unbelievable career. And I'll tell you what, I grew up watching you, obviously, in Long Island, and want to thank you very much for all those times you allowed me to have watching you box.
Rick, I want to say thank you. I enjoyed your show, and hello to your fans. Anytime you need me, when there's a big fight coming up, you want me to help you break it down, just call me.
I would definitely do that, Gerry, and be safe out there, okay?
All right, my friend. Thank you.
All right,
Peace,
thank
Gerry.
you.
Peace.
That was Gerry Cooney, former heavyweight boxer. What a great, great, great interview.